I mean, I always tell people, like, I was making like 30,000 a month.
Right.
Like, not generating, like I was making profit. I mean, generating, I was probably, generating like, a couple 100,000 a month.
Right. Hey, this is Matt Cox, and I'm here with Seth Ferranti, and we're going to do a podcast on Seth's story. Seth was I saw on Concrete, there was like what was it? He said you were like the LSD kingpin or something, or yeah. So basically, Seth was arrested and did 20. You got 25 years.
Yeah.
Did 21 years in federal prison for selling LSD.
Yeah,
right?
LSD and cannabis. Yeah.
And cannabis. Okay, so all right, check it out. So, somebody asked me earlier too, and like the first question somebody asked me, and I didn't even know. Like, where were you born?
Yeah, I was born in Lemoore. Lemoore is actually out in the desert. They call it the Central Coast. It's between LA and San Diego.
Okay, and you, I mean, I kind of know the story. So you grew up there, and you said you started basically with just what? You start off just.
Yeah, no, I was a military brat. So I was actually born on like a Navy base. It's out in the desert. That's where like they train fighter pilots.
Right.
So my dad was basically a fighter pilot, and but he was the Navy. He used to fly off aircraft carriers. So we were in San Diego, we were in Virginia Beach, we were in Germany, we were in London, but we always ended back up in California usually until he retired. And that's kind of where my problem started, because I was like this California kid, and I ended up in Northern Virginia, like in this really kind of lily white upper class area, like right out of Washington D.C. when I was basically like a sophomore, junior in high school. And being from California, and at that age, like everybody, we were going out partying, and just the weed that they just got like garbage weed. It was like all brick weed, like brown shit.
Right.
And then like if they could get LSD or something like that, it was just like super expensive, like $20 a hit. So I mean, I knew a lot of people. I had a lot of friends that were getting into that stuff, back in California. So I started getting weed sent, from Northern California, like Emerald Triangle, Humboldt County bud. And from like San Francisco, I started getting LSD sent.
Okay. But you were, how old were you at that time when you were?
Man, I was
You
young.
were young.
I was like 16, yeah. So I was like 16. And at first, I mean, it was just for personal.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I would just get personal. Like, 5 or 6 of us, we would kind of put our money together, and, I'd get it sent, and I'd send the money. And but then eventually, like, if you do drugs, and a lot of young kids, kind of figure this out, or at least the smarter young kids figure this out. So when you're young and you're doing drugs, and then finally you're like, well, fuck it, if I can get it, why should I pay for it?
Right.
So that's like the first thing. You're like, you do it for free drugs. But then, after you do that for a while, you're like, well, fuck it, I don't want to pay for it, and I want to make money.
Right.
So, this was, and it wasn't something that just happened overnight. So this was a gradual thing, like, over my first probably 9 to 12 months in Northern Virginia, where I've like, hey man, I can make money off this shit, and then other stuff happened. Like I started going on tour, like at 17, I started going on Grateful Dead tour. And anybody that knows anything about the Grateful Dead tour, like in the late 80s, like we're talking like 1988,
right?
Like what they call Shakedown Street or the Lot. I mean, it was basically like an open air drug market.
Right.
So, and like I say, when I say open air drug market, I don't mean like cocaine, heroin. There was that stuff around, but it's mostly like I call it, like, I'm a weed and psychedelics dude. Right. I was never into cocaine. I was never into heroin, speed. I hate amphetamines. I don't even like MDMA. I've never been like a amphetamine type of guy. So I was always into like the psychedelics, and cannabis, hash, mushrooms, even stuff like peyote, mescaline, so that was kind of like where I leaned, kind of on that side. So I would go to these Dead shows. And the big thing about the Dead shows, like, I mean, it's just this big lot and everybody's selling drugs. So I had 2 reasons I went to the Dead shows. One reason is because I established a connect down in Kentucky that grew weed, and they grew pretty good weed, compared to the brick weed from Texas that was coming around. So I would take that weed, I would grab that weed for whatever, $1,600, $1,800 a pound, And I would take that on dead tour and I would sell it for $200 an ounce. And if it was good weed, like what they call kind bud, and when they say kind bud, they were referring to like the bud from Humboldt County, you know, the Emerald Triangle, which I could usually only get in the fall, you know,
Right.
at harvest time. But that's what they wanted. They wanted that good sun-grown organic
Because the
bud.
brickweed was basically crap.
The brickweed was crap. So, you know, that's what the deadheads wanted, you know, to go with that whole hippie vibe. So I started going and I started selling bud on tour. You know, and I was making a, you know, considerable amount of money, not doubling my money, but, you know, I was usually making like, you know, 1,000, 1,200 a pound. And it was easier to get, I got better LSD contacts on tour. Cause, you know, I had some friends and they could get like some sheets here and there, but they couldn't really, you know, like hit me off. And I had to pay like, you know, I wasn't paying wholesale prices. Like they were getting it basically like retail prices, you know, but still, you know, not like, they were selling hits. You know, I was buying whole sheets from them, you know, so I was probably getting paying like $1 or $2 a hit and selling it for $5 a hit. But then I knew if I went on tour and I hooked up with the right people, I could basically get it for like 30, 40 cents a hit.
You're not making it though. You just have a contact.
Yeah, no, I never made it. So, you know, but,
because when I was locked up, I met one guy, the whole time I was locked up, one guy that actually made LSD. I mean, because, you know, it's not like it's easy. It's not like growing weed. It's like this guy.
You got to be a chemist.
Yeah.
You got to be a chemist. So, you know, so, so what I know about the whole LSD trade is a lot of times at the shows, they would fly in the liquid. So, you know, they fly in like 25 grams, you know, at a time. But, you know, each one of those grams makes 10,000 hits, you know, to give you the number. So pretty much every dead show, and the Dead used to crisscross the nation. You know, they used to play everywhere, and they would play multiple nights. So every show, every town, like let's say they played 3 nights at Philly, you know, from San Francisco, all that stuff is still basically made in that area. You know, all the chemists, you know, and a lot of times it's the same guys from the 60s. You know, maybe they have like, you know, they mentored other guys, younger guys, and brought other guys into the trade. But you know, it's not like a big group of people. I mean, they keep it pretty, you know, secret, because it's a lot to even, like now, to even get the precursors and all the other stuff. I mean, they've outlawed a lot of that stuff, so it's really hard to get the stuff to make it, you know. But I mean, like I say, one gram is 10,000 hits, so you don't need a lot.
Yeah, the guy was telling me like they would get the sheets of paper and the perforated sheets of paper, and he was like, you're literally just putting a droplet on each.
Yeah, the blotter paper. Well, what also they do is they actually dip it.
The whole sheet?
Yeah, they dip it. So like what you got, like one sheet of 100 hits is about this big. So that's like a sheet. And then they would have what you call like a page. So a page would be like 100 of those.
All right, okay.
Or no, 10 of those. So that would be like, you know, 1,000 hits.
Okay.
You know, 100. And then they had what you call a book, would be 10 pages. And then, you know, that would be like 10,000 hits. That's like a gram of LSD, you know. But it's all the blotter paper, you know, it absorbs it, and that's pretty much, you know, I mean, it's not a perfect science because some places might absorb more than others.
Right.
You know, I've talked to a lot of chemists, so, you know, that's basically, they've kind of explained a lot of the stuff to me, but yeah, I've never done it. But I know they would fly it in, and, you know, then like when they get it there, then they would go through the process of laying it on the sheets, you know, where they kind of dip it in it or whatever.
Right.
You know, and they all would also do a lot of liquid. I remember going to the shows, and this is kind of funny because whenever there were shows, they would have a lot of the deadheads or the hippie kids would go to the local grocery stores, and they would buy all the boxes of the food coloring. You know, like the food coloring, it comes in these like little boxes, and there's like 10 or something, or sometimes 5.
Right.
And those were like what they would use for the vials. So they would get that food coloring and they would pour it all out, you know, and clean it out. And then they would fill that up, because that one vial in that food coloring, that was like 100, that was like 100 hits. You know, so they would sell vials too, because some people would do like straight liquid. I did some liquid one time. So one time I was at some shows in Pittsburgh, like in '89. And, you know, I'd always been a big fan of Jimi Hendrix. And I used to read how Jimi Hendrix, he used to take his bandana and he would just pour like a whole vial of acid on his bandana, and then he would wrap it around his head. You know, so it's not like he was taking 100 hits, but I mean, he was absorbing.
Yeah, he's still absorbing it.
A lot of that. So one time at this show in Pittsburgh, it was actually right after Brett Midland, the keyboardist, a real popular keyboardist, died. He like OD'd on a speedball. And I was like, man, I was on this Jimi Hendrix trip, you know, and maybe I'd seen some documentary or something, I don't know, or read about it in Rolling Stone or something. So I actually took and I poured 3/4 of a bottle, basically like 75 hits on a bandana, and then I wrapped it around my head. And this is like before the show starts, you know, because back then it was way different. Back then, like, you had like free reign in the whole stadium, man. It wasn't like all the security, like they cordoned off this area and you can only go here with your tickets. Like back then, dude, like you gave your ticket, you went in the stadium, you know, from the lot. Yeah, you can even go back out to the lot, you know, because the lot's like, you know, Shakedown Street. So it's like a party and stuff like that. So this one time I did it and I took all this fucking 75 hits, right? And we're waiting for the show to start, and everybody used to go up to the top. So this is Three River Stadium, Pittsburgh. Everybody would go up to the top and smoke weed, you know, because you don't want to smoke weed. You didn't want to front out the security or whatever. So if you went up top, they didn't give a fuck. So we walked up, me and my buddy. He'd only take maybe like 25 hits. He took the rest of the bottle, but he drank it, you know. So, you know, he took like really ingested 25 hits. You know, I don't know how. Mine was 75 hits, but it was in a bandana, so it's not like I took 75 hits.
Right.
But it was, you know, going into my skin. So we walked up to go to the smoking section, you know, where everybody's smoking weed. And so we're up there, you know, everybody got their, you know, big ounces or quarter pounds. We're rolling up fatties and we're smoking them. And then like the show starts, you know, so like everybody goes back down to the field, because then it would just be the whole field would just be like wide open and everybody be dancing. So me and my buddy, though, like the trip starts, you know, kicking in. Right, so we're like looking at the steps, you know, and you know, like in a lot of the stadiums, I mean, it's kind of steep,
right?
You know, so we're like, you start tripping balls, right? So we don't go back down. We're like, oh no, we're just gonna stay up here. We're gonna smoke some more weed. So it ended up, we stayed up there, and this is like, I mean, they used to play. They play like 2 sets, man. So they play like, you know, like an hour and a half, and then they come back, play another hour and a half. So this is like 3 hours, dude. Like we're up there, like our friends keep coming up trying to, hey man, come down. And we're like looking, we're like, fuck no. Like a couple times we would try to walk down the steps.
It's too steep, right?
Because we were tripping fucking balls, man. Right. So we couldn't walk down. So eventually, like the show's over, and like we stayed up there the whole time. And eventually everybody leaves, right? And like the people are going around cleaning, you know, and they're like looking at us like, what the fuck are these dudes doing? You know, we're just up there like smoking weed, tripping. And so I don't even know. It seemed like forever, but eventually like a dude, one of the custodian guys comes to us, you know, and he was like, yo, man, he's like, they're about to lock the doors of the stadium. Like, you need to go now. You need to get the fuck out of here. And there's like nobody. There's just like trash everywhere, people picking up shit. So finally, we actually like, we crawled down, you know, like backwards, you know, on the steps, you know, like crawled down backwards until we got to like the, you know, like one of the main floors, you know, and then we could walk out. But yeah, that was crazy. That's the most acid I ever took at one time. And like, I can only say I remember it, but I mean, it was, I mean, I think I had a good time, even though like I missed the show and I was like scared to walk out because it was like a ledge, man. It was like crazy. I still, to this day, I have like vivid memories of trying, like I'm telling you, probably in that however many hours, 3 to 5 hours, I probably attempted to walk down those steps like 20 or 25 times, me and my buddy. And I couldn't do it. It was not happening until finally, like, and you know, acid lasts a long time too. So, you know, I was still tripping. It was just like, they were going to lock the door and I didn't want to get fucking, you know, locked in the fucking stadium.
So I mean, so at some point though, like you started, I mean, you know, you kind of started selling more and more. You're making money at it. You're, you know.
Yeah, really, my business kind of exploded when everybody started going to college.
Right.
So, you know, first I'm like a sophomore, and then I'm getting more into it when I'm a junior. And, you know, like I say, I'm selling to the sophomores and I'm selling to the seniors. You know, and I was kind of like that guy. I was kind of like that dude in high school. Like, if you wanted weed, if you wanted LSD, I was like the dude. And I don't care. I would sell like 10 sheets. I would sell multiple sheets. I would sell like 5 or 10 hits. You know, because I was like, whatever. It was all money to me. Plus, I always felt like I was filling a need, you know, because I felt like people wanted good, clean drugs And I always felt like, weed and LSD, and mushrooms and stuff like that. I always felt they were good drugs. I didn't feel like they were bad drugs. I didn't carry a gun. I didn't have a criminal organization. You know what I'm saying? I didn't go around beat people up. A lot of times people paid cash. A lot of I fronted stuff to people. A lot of times people that I fronted stuff to were my friends and they fucked up the money and I still didn't do it. I was like, well, whatever, I can make more money.
Right.
That was always kind of like my attitude. So,
you were saying you didn't really feel like it should be illegal anyway. I mean, it's
I tell people to this day, this is my big thing, right? I was never a criminal, right? I broke laws that I thought were wrong.
Right.
I was an outlaw. You know what I'm saying? So, like I say, to me, there's a difference. In prison, you got criminals and you got outlaws, and maybe to the government and law enforcement, it's all the same because, we're breaking the laws of society. But, there's a difference. Anybody, you've been in prison, man. There's a difference. A lot of times a criminal is going to do whatever he can. Criminal, like, fuck you over for $1.
Right.
Where, like, an outlaw has, like, morals.
Some kind of code that he's trying to live by.
Yeah, so there's a big difference, but so I probably really exploded probably around 89. When I was a senior. So a lot of my friends had went off to colleges, and were like freshmen, and so I went to Robinson, and Robinson was a big school in Fairfax County. So Robinson was probably like 4,000 people. And then we had a sister school that was like not even 5 miles away called Lake Braddock. And Lake Braddock would have like 4,000 kids. And so, for 2 years, going on 3 years, I had been selling, drugs, LSD and weed to all these people in these schools, going all the parties. And, like I say, everybody smoked weed back then. It didn't matter, if you were a jock, if you were a stoner, if you, like we called them truckers, like the dudes with the big 4x4s,
right.
If you, some Virginia, you got like the more country dudes, so it didn't, the cheerleaders, the popular kids, everybody smoked weed. Everybody did LSD. Everybody did mushrooms. Some of them did coke, but, I didn't really fuck with those people. That wasn't really my scene. So when these people started going to colleges, and these are all good kids from good families, not necessarily like super rich, some more rich than others, but all upper middle class, like all these kids, like they got a Mustang or like a hand-me-down Beamer or Mercedes when they were 16.
Right.
So when they all went off, they went to all these colleges, like Penn State, University of Maryland, Kentucky University, UK, West Virginia University, all the way like Virginia Tech,
right?
Radford, VCU, all the Virginia schools. So I just had like all these friends that went to all these different colleges and all within, pretty much neighboring states to Virginia. So
but
when
they still need drugs.
Yeah, so they're going, and you want to go because like when you're a senior, you want to go to the colleges anyhow because you want to party, check out the girls and see what college is like because that's what it's about in the suburbs. You go to school and then you go to college and it's like a party. So like they're calling me up there, and I'm going and they want me to bring drugs. They're like, hey, dude, what can you bring? Whatever. They're like, I need this for me, and like my whole frat, everybody needs shit. So I started going, and it just like turned in. It was like just this little kind of local thing, where I was kind of like, a retail dude, but not really a big wholesale. I did maybe a little wholesale, but that was like real small part of my market. It was mostly retail,
right?
Hand-to-hand stuff. And it just turned into where, I remember the first time I went to Radford, right? I went to Radford in the beginning of the semester, so late August 1990. And Radford is like kind of like the sister school to Virginia Tech. Radford used to be like an all-girls school, but then then they changed it so guys could come. And Virginia Tech is like right there too. So it's these two. Virginia Tech is a really huge school, but Radford's a pretty big school. So like August 1990, I go to Radford, and I had just picked up some bud that they just harvested in Kentucky. And back then, like sometimes like in the summer, like it would get dry, man. Like you couldn't find any weed. And if you did find weed, it would be like brown, garbage brick weed with seeds. So I was always known for getting the good bud from like Kentucky or Northern California. So this time I brought like a ton of, not a ton, but probably like 20 pounds. just harvested, fresh, good green bud. And I go to my dude's house, right? And my dude has a house, and it's kind of like a little, duplex apartment thing. So like he has a house right here, and then his buddy has a house right here. And so I bring bud, and he's like, man, nobody has bud. He's like, everybody wants bud. I'm like, well, fucking call him, dude. I'm like, we're here. So we break out the fucking triple beam, right? And first I'm like in his room, and like people are coming, but it was like so many fucking people, like it was like crazy. So what we ended up doing is we ended up going to his friend's apartment, which was like kind of connecting, across the way. And we had that door, and we put like a table in front of the door, like we're a fucking vendor. And me and this other dude, my road partner, we're basically weighing stuff out. And there was like a line. So there was like a line all through this walkway and all through my friend's house, because they would come in my friend's house, the front door, and then, come out in this side door, and we'd go, and it was like a line, dude. And we like literally quartered, ounced up weed for probably like 3 hours straight, and I would like literally like sitting at the table throwing fucking money in the bag. Like, I don't even know how much money, I don't even know how much weed I'm selling. But at the end, I mean, we still had some left. I probably had about 5 or 6 pounds left, but I literally probably sold 14, 15 pounds in 3 hours, all for like quarters and ounces. And I just have like this big duffel bag of money, and that was just like, that's like what it was back then. And I did that. And once I did that, first I was like, man, I can make a lot of money doing this. That was my first thought. But second, I was like, man, I got to find a better fucking process, because this is like some bullshit. Because it's, back then it was marijuana, the war on drugs and all that shit. I was like, man, this is like too open. So what I did among the people I knew at the different colleges, because I had some situations at other colleges like that, that was the most extreme situation.
Right.
That's why I'm telling the story. But, I had different situations like that.
It paints a good scene, though.
Yeah. So I just started finding dudes, like some of my friends, like the smartest, most trustworthy or on point friends. And I would just go to them and I'd say, look, dude, check this out. I'm going to come in. I'm going to drop you like 20 sheets of acid. I'm going to drop you like 5 pounds of bud. And then, you can do all the hand-to-hand sales. And, this is how much you owe me. And then I'll come back and get it.
Right.
So I did that at all these different colleges. So I started doing this loop, where I would go down 81 in Virginia and hit all the Virginia colleges. Then I would come back through Kentucky. I would go to Eastern Kentucky. And then I would go up to UK. Then I would come back to West Virginia University, which West Virginia University in Morgantown was like my hugest market, man. That place, at that time in the late 80s, like West Virginia, like in Playboy magazine, like West Virginia University was always like in the top 5 party colleges. Like it was just fucking crazy. It was just known. Right. You know what I'm saying? They always had like a big football program. They were always kind of big in football, but they were just known. It was known as like a super party college. So, and I had my buddies were in the Delta Tau Delta fraternity, and they had this big fucking huge old dilapidated mansion like on Frat Row, and they just used to have these big ass fucking parties. So they used to have they used to have this party. It was called the the backyard, not the backyard brawl, but it was called like the backyard something. I can't think of the second name, but so it was called like the backyard brawl or backyard
bash or something, whatever.
That's it, backyard bash.
Okay. Right.
You got the word. So it was called the backyard bash. So they would have this party, and there would be like literally 5,000 kids, and they would always have it right in the beginning of the semester. And there would literally be 5,000 kids like going through this old dilapidated mansion, and then they had like this big, backyard and parking spot, and they would get like reggae bands and stuff like that. And so I would go to there, and at first, like it would be like I would be selling hand to hand. Eventually, I got one of my dudes to do everything, but like their parties were so big that eventually West Virginia University like told them they couldn't have the backyard bash anymore. They were like, "You guys, that party's outlawed. You can't have it." So like, what these dudes did, right? Because these are like some little, little smart, also entitled rich kids. They were like, okay. So they called it the Backyard Ash. You bring the bees.
Okay.
So they just changed the name like that and still had the same fucking party. They were basically like, fuck the university. But that's what I did. I cultivated these relationships. I kind of made friends of mine that were drug users, partiers into drug dealers. And
So now you're just the distributor.
yeah, so this started like 89. So then by the time like 91, when I'm really rolling, I'm basically supplying like 15 colleges in 5 states with weed and LSD.
Okay. That's a full-time job.
No, definitely. Like I say, at this time too, like I didn't work a job because that was my job, but I actually went to college a couple times, just like, you know, the local community college. But it was always like, I came down to Florida, dude. I came down to Florida in 89, in the fall of 89. And I was enrolled at, what's it called? The USF.
Okay. Yeah.
I was
That's
enrolled.
where I got my degree.
Yeah, I was enrolled in USF, right, in the fall of 89. But I mean, it didn't last because I was just drawn. You know, I was drawn to like the Dead shows. I was drawn to the Dead scene. You know, I was drawn to the, you know, just like to me, because to me, being that drug dealer, it was like being a rock star.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it wasn't even the money; it was a lifestyle. And not to say, I mean.
No, you're the guy calling the shots. Everybody's like, hey, they need something from you, and they treat you with respect, and you know, yeah. I mean, I know.
And then too, it's like just the chicks, dude. Because like I had multiple girlfriends, just like at colleges. I would have like different chicks. Like I would like if they were in the dorms, I would move them out, get them an apartment, just so I had like a safe place to lay my head, and I would pay like their apartments. So like I said, I was making a lot of money for a teenager.
Right.
I mean, I always tell people, like, I was making like 30,000 a month.
Right.
Like, not generating, like, I was making profit. I mean, generating, I was probably, you know, generating like, you know, a couple 100,000 a month.
Right.
You know, but I was literally making, you know, 25, 30 grand a month.
I mean, 20 grand, 30 grand a month is a lot of money for a grown adult. Raising a family, that's a ton of money. For a kid that's
and this was like, you know, 89, 90. But really, I always tell people too, because, you know, I sold drugs, so probably from like, whatever, 16 to I got busted at 20, so 4 years. But it was really only like 9 months where I was at that height. So it was that last 9 months, like 90, you know, into when I caught my case, you know, the fall of 91. So, you know, because before, like everything I'll explain, this is when I'm like putting everything together. You know, I'm getting all my sources and my contacts straight. You know, I got it eventually. Like I didn't even have to go on tour to get the acid because I developed where they would send me like 100 sheets, 10,000 hits. And I was basically getting like 100,000 hits a month, you know, sent to me. And then for the weed, you know, I would get in the fall to about January, I would get weed sent from, you know, San Francisco, from like Northern California, you know, Emerald Triangle bud. And I would drive down to Kentucky myself and get their bud, you know, which was that they grew domestically, which was pretty good. It wasn't as good as a Humboldt bud, but you know, it was close. And then the rest of the year, from January until like August, I would basically get the brick pot, the Mexican brick pot. And I used to get a lot of weed out of Fort Myers. I would drive down to Fort Myers, Florida. You know, I used to go to Dallas, Texas. I'd fly to Dallas, Texas, but I would drive down to Fort Myers, Florida, and I would get weed from, actually, it was like Kentucky dudes that were getting the weed down here. Like, so they'd grow the weed, you know, all year in the fall. And then in the winter, you know, sometimes they would come down here, you know, to kind of keep the business going. So I'd go down to Fort Myers, and I wasn't picking up a lot, man. And, you know, I pick up like whatever, 50 pounds, 100 pounds of brick pot, which when it's all compressed like that, you know, it's not that much. And also what I was doing was I was flying down to Dallas, and I would bring money, and I would get like 50 pounds or something, 40, 50 pounds, and I would actually pack it in a suitcase, and I would check it, and I would fly back with it. You know, like I was doing that like when I was 17. So that was crazy because back then, you know, you could go right to the airport, right, and you could say like, you could buy a ticket. You could say like, my name is Joe Smith,
right,
and you could pay him cash for a one-way ticket. You know, and
no red flags, no
nothing. And I go down with it. Like I had this big green 1970s Samsonite, you know, suitcase, you know, huge, probably like, you know, this big. Right. And I fly down, I check it, it was empty. You know what I'm saying? And I go down and I literally sit at my buddies down there because I had some buddies that went to University of Texas at Arlington. So and they had developed some Mexican contacts down there. So I would literally go down there, sit and wait on the Mexican dudes, you know, until they had their shit ready. I dealt with this one dude named Mexican Eddie, and I would literally get the weed, buy it, pack it back in the suitcase. You know, I'd wrap it and stuff like that, and then I would check it in my luggage. I'd go back, buy a one-way ticket, cash. This time I might be Chris Smith.
Right.
And go to, Dulles or, DC National Airport and go pick it up off the carousel. So, you know, I didn't do that a lot, but I probably did that like, I don't know, 15 times over the years. You know, but mostly I was a smuggler. You know, I was a driver. That's what I did. Because I figured out at a very early age, if you buy a product or, you know, drug like weed or LSD in one point, you know, and brought it to another point, that's how you made money.
Yeah. Yeah, you could leave that on the table. You don't have to. It's not a big deal.
Right.
I mean, this is pretty casual.
I'm just like, I'm a director, so I'm like anal with get everything out of the fucking shot.
I was thinking the Fort Myers thing. I wrote a story about these two guys that ran basically like it was one of the largest bust in that area from the DEA. I think they got caught with like 1,200 pounds or something. It was just like, you know, and to get seized, to get caught with 1,200 pounds, God only knows what, you know, if that's just the one thing they caught you with.
Yeah, that's just the one shipment.
But that was Fort Myers. Fort Myers is a big, you know, it's big for marijuana, for bringing in marijuana. Plus, what was the other guy's name that we did?
Cowboy.
Saltwater Cowboy. Yeah, he was.
Tim McBride.
Yeah, Tim McBride.
Yeah.
He's off.
He was in the Keys.
Keys.
Oh, that dude was a huge fucking marijuana smuggler.
Yeah, he's an interesting character too.
Mm-hmm. See, that's why I always look like. I'm not saying for a teenager, I was a big drug dealer for a teenager, but like when I really look at it, like after doing all that time in the feds and stuff like that, like I look at it. I mean, I was a small timer. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, for a kid, yeah. I mean, and who knows if I didn't get busted, maybe I would have got bigger. You know, you never know. But you know, once I got in the feds, and even like dude like Tim, like I mean, those dudes were just. Right. I mean, they're bringing in fucking tons. So, I mean, we got an organization or a crew that's bringing in tons. I mean, really what I was doing, I mean, I'm like a minnow. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but it's hard to, you know, it's, you know, you get in front of the judge and you could, you know, they make you sound
they don't give
fucking,
a fuck. They act like I was fucking John Gotti or Pablo Escobar of the fucking suburbs of the fucking feds. Every fucking new case is public enemy number one.
Yeah. Absolutely. I always love that these guys get in front of the judge and they make him sound like just the most dangerous criminal in the world, and then they send him to a low. Yeah. Or they send him to a camp. You're like, if I'm so dangerous, how did I go directly to a camp?
No, it's fucking crazy, man. That's our criminal justice system, man. It's they got all their priorities wrong. But
sorry.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I had like 9 months where I was rolling, where like I was like, I mean, I was probably the man, but you know, like I was really feeling myself. Like I thought I was a man, you know, where like I had built everything up over a couple years. And, you know, even too, like as a kid, you know, I mean, teenagers, I mean, you second guess yourself, you know, you're insecure, you know, so I was doing this for several years and, you know, maybe I still didn't feel how I wanted to feel. And then like, dude, I had like that last 9 months before I got busted. Like I was on top of the world. Like I could literally, I felt like do anything I wanted. I had enough money. You know, one time right before I got busted, dude, like I went to Hawaii. I just went to Hawaii for 2 fucking months, dude. I was like, man, fuck it. You know, I was like, I'm going to get the fuck out of here. So I put a couple dudes, you know, that actually, they ended up on my case and they ended up telling on me. But I put them, I said, okay, you're in charge of the weed. You're in charge of the LSD. Right. I'm just going to go to fucking, you know, just fucking stack my money. I'm going to go to fucking Hawaii for fucking 2 months and just chill out. You know, but, yeah, and then, like I say, I had a bunch of different girlfriends. But I was always the type of dude, too, usually, like, I would have like runs with girls, you know, I would have like I would always have a main girl. Well, I had like a 6 to 9 month run with her and she'd be like my girl, even though I might've had, you know, other girls that I just saw every now and then,
right.
You know, but that was kind of like, there's some 80s stuff. I don't know. Maybe people would look down on that today.
I don't.
It's a more sensitive world today.
So what was the catalyst that brought it all down?
Yeah. So basically,